It's absolutely wonderful. You are kicking off the conference. So we've had, I think, nearly 3,000 people register. We've just started. We're very much looking forward to showing some of your videos and understanding a bit more about you. Get a lot of people talking about TikTok and saying, well, is it a force for, within ADHD, is it a force for good or is it a force for bad?
What TikTok?
Yeah.
I think a force for good, definitely. 100%.
I do too. Could you expand on your argument?
When I first was diagnosed with it, well, before that, when I first was made aware of it, I completely had no idea about ADHD at all, really. And when it was actually my hairdresser of all people that kind of pointed it out to me. And they said to themselves, I think you've got ADHD. It's very similar to one of my relatives. And I just like brushed off completely because in my head, as everyone thinks, it's just a young boy running around a classroom, acting bad. And I didn't think that was me at all because I'm not even particularly hyper. So anyway, I looked into it more and more and I found that there was like such little information out there at all, really, when it comes to ADHD, especially ADHD in women. A lot of the things that I looked at the time was all guys. And there was only a few and far between on YouTube. And also they're like basically in America as well. So there was not really much UK-based information out there. So when I ended up getting diagnosed, eventually, I thought to myself, like, why would I not talk about my experience? Obviously, everything's based on my own experience and it's different from everybody else. But based on mine, I thought to myself, if I saw somebody talking about the way that I felt, I'd feel less alone. And then I'd feel, able to go and do my own research about it. Because at the end of the day, that's all I'm giving is like just information that people can do with as they please. So I definitely think it's a good thing. And I think that's maybe why it's taken off so much.
I absolutely agree. And I think one of the problems about ADHD is that people haven't talked about it. And it's not been part of the conversation. And I don't think, I think ADHD has provided an ability for a community to come together that hasn't been able to come together before. And I think it's very important. And we had someone in a support group not so long ago say, like, I was diagnosed by TikTok, and we just kind of said, well, you weren't diagnosed through TikTok. What happened was you learned what ADHD was in TikTok.
Yeah.
And from there went to go and get a formal diagnosis and then get the support, the help, the understanding that that helps and that you need. And it's a complete sea change.
I think people make mistake. If you see something, they think this is only a few people that was in the majority think this way, but they think maybe TikTok is trying to diagnose everyone, which is not the case. There's like so many different symptoms or behavior traits, should I say, of ADHD that comes with other things as well. So that's why it's important, if you feel like you relate to it, to go and get a proper diagnosis, because you can't be diagnosed over TikTok. But at least it highlights, that's something you might relate to, and you might be feeling alone your whole life, or you might be feeling crazy. So that's all it is, really.
And you mentioned behavioral traits. So your ADHD behavior trait videos are really popular. What behavior traits of yours did you realize were ADHD related? Like, how did you? There's always this line, this understanding, right? What's you? What's ADHD? Like, so how have you explored that?
Well, I think the important thing, like, to remember is before and after medication. So I'm on a medication now. I'm still me, and I think people always think that you're going to lose your personality or you're going to be a different person, and that's not the case. Basically, what the ADHD behavioral traits come from is from the lack of dopamine that you have. So if you, for example, have like you're hypersensitive about things, you can't what's the word for it? You can't rationalize things as well. So it makes you quite volatile at times. That's an ADHD symptom. You can be hypersensitive. Obviously, the normal stuff that people would go to straight away is like the concentration, but people think that, you know, everybody can't concentrate on things that they don't enjoy. But the case is for ADHD, it's like simply crippling to try and do that. And it makes, you know, life so much harder to get through school and to get through work. And if you can focus on something that you really love, that is also a trait of ADHD, because there's so many benefits to it as well if you kind of zone in on it. Because then you can completely hyper focus, you have all of these ideas. Like, that's what an ADHD brain's good at. But because obviously we've been, you know, brought up in a society where everything's like made for the neurotypical brain, it makes people who are neurodivergent feel like they're useless or they're failures or whatever. So there's so many different traits that I just thought was actually depression, because I was so up and down. And that's a whole nother problem, is that so many people get diagnosed with depression when it's actually not that at all. And then obviously after a long time, and I finally got my diagnosis, I realized how much that the Elvan's medication that I'm on has like saved everything for me, because it's just made life so much easier. I feel more calm, more rational. I can actually do things without the constant need to be like distracted, and I've got better relationships with my friends. And there's so much to it. Like, it's hard to kind of narrow down just a few behavioral traits, but getting an idea of it initially, and not feeling like you are, because I think people who don't have ADHD, not everybody, but a lot of people they just don't get the way that your brain works. So they either tell you to just get on with it, or why are you so hypersensitive, or why are you this or that? And that in turn makes you feel like you're alone with it. So, but I didn't realize that these things were ADHD related prior to this, because I never knew about it. I never knew about the information that was out there, sort of thing. And obviously TikTok's like a new kind of, I guess, platform for people to discover things. And I think what's quite satisfying and like lovely to see is people saying that because of my videos, they went on their own little journey to like find help for themselves. And some people have got diagnosed, some people haven't. And I just find that so like nice, you know, to try and help people.
I think it is a wonderful thing, and it is important. I think you did a video on why you're making the videos, and you just talked a bit about them. So I'm going to pop that up to show to people.
I just wanted to quickly address this little comment here, because I'm getting quite a lot of similar ones on the post saying like, you don't have ADHD, these are traits that everybody does, you're not a doctor, I'm not going to go see a doctor, like this comment. And that's absolutely fine. Like, your mental health and health in general is completely up to you to decide what you want to do and investigate yourself, sort of thing. But I never said that I was a doctor, but I do have ADHD, and these things are definitely traits that anybody with ADHD would know are a thing. But these are only some traits. Like, there's so many traits out there, and a lot of my other videos show those traits. But I guess I wanted to just address just generally why I started doing these videos. And the reason being is because for my whole life, primarily in my adult life, I've went through a lot of kind of really depressive episodes, and I didn't understand why. I didn't understand why my brain was going this way, why I was so emotional, why I was acting the way I was. And I've been to the doctor so many times, and every single time that I went, they always gave me antidepressants, right? And I've been on them a few times, and every single time they've made me feel violently sick. They've made me feel even worse than before, and they've actually made me feel numb to the world, which is like actually worse than feeling bad, is feeling numb, in my opinion. So I came off them myself. Like, I didn't want to do it anymore. I wanted to discover other ways and means. I've been to counselling, I've done loads of things, but things were not getting better. So it wasn't until somebody pointed out to me, who has a family member who has ADHD, I have similar traits and I should go get it checked out. And then I went back to the NHS with this information, and they basically said that we can't really help you for years. So then I personally went and researched myself, and then I went to private, and then it turns out after loads and loads of time and diagnosis that I do have ADHD. So basically the moral of the story is, the reason that I've been doing these posts in the first place is to help those people out there who might feel similar to me, who might have been bunged on an antidepressant, because that seems to be the way everyone just gets antidepressants left, right and centre, to actually feel like they're not alone. And like, if it's not working for them either, maybe if they're having these traits, or the traits in my other videos, that it might be something to look into. That's all it is. I don't mean to like pressure anybody to say like, oh, you have ADHD. I don't want anyone to be like self-diagnosing or anything like that, because I mean, you can't really do that anyway. If you have ADHD, you have to get a full diagnosis, and it's difficult. But I guess I just wanted to address that because I didn't feel like there was a voice for me when I was feeling that way. I had to look into it a lot myself, and there's been a lot of people, mostly these comments are very few and far between, but I wanted to help the people who are looking for that extra little bit of, you know, guidance, I guess. And all I'm offering is my experience. I'm not trying to tell anyone that I'm a doctor or anything like that. But it's just supposed to be like somebody to be there for you, feeling the same way. And if you're not feeling the same way as me, that's absolutely fine. But yeah, that's all I wanted to say. It's just to help people and, you know, to share my experience.
So you talked about, and you've talked in this conversation as well, about the fact you were diagnosed with depression previously.
Oh, right, yeah.
And is that something you've had? Like, have you had other people come and talk to you about that? Had similar experiences?
Yeah, because I think it's a problem just generally, I guess, where if you have certain ways that you feel, I think it can be instantly diagnosed as depression, and you can be given antidepressants quite freely, actually, which I think is quite a strange thing because it's such a long, tedious process to be diagnosed for ADHD. I think it should be more looked at just giving people antidepressants, because I was speaking to my doctor about it, and actually what's in antidepressants, and I'm just saying what my doctor said, it might be different for everybody, but in a general basis, it actually makes your ADHD brain worse. It's not the right thing for you to have.
I mean, people are going to have these different experiences, and
yeah, exactly. So
you actually talk about medication. We've got a video up, which at this time I guarantee you'll be able to see it, although I still think not hear it.
That's fine.
I'm going to put it up for people to listen to and see what they think.
In response to this, the transition to the medication was a really good experience for me. It was unbelievably smooth. Obviously, everyone's experiences are different with the medication, but for me, it has been perfect. The good thing as well is if you are nervous, it's a stimulant rather than a medication that takes a while to like build up, like an antidepressant, for example. So it literally kicks in within an hour and it wears off the same day. So you'll kind of know pretty quickly whether it's for you or not. And for me, to be honest, the medication was like life-changing. It was quite emotional, actually, like literally the first day that I took it, because for the first time in my life, all of these crazy rampant thoughts that were happening 24/7 literally just died down. And for the first time in my head, like there was nothing going on, if that makes sense. It was surreal. I felt this mental sense of calm. Like everything was just super chilled and like really quite pleasant. I also could like concentrate on things that I was never able to before. Like I could completely focus on something and just really like not hate my life when doing it, because with ADHD, if you enjoy doing something, if it's like watching a Netflix show or if it's like gaming or whatever, you can concentrate on it for hours and hours and hours because you're really enjoying it. But if you're doing something you don't want to do, it's like someone literally has to put a gun to your head to be able to focus on it. And this completely counteracted that. It was so surreal. Something that a lot of people don't know about ADHD is your emotional regulation is all over the place. So you can take things to heart really badly that other people won't care about. Your reactions are ridiculous. You can get really angry. All of these things I definitely was. I was very, very sensitive, over the top about everything. And since being on the LVANs, I've been like so much more rational. I'm not falling out with my friends like I used to. I'm not like shouting at my boyfriend. I'm not overthinking everything to the last degree. And like my boyfriend of all people has noticed a huge change in just like my sanity, if that makes sense. And just generally feeling so much less overwhelmed. I don't feel like the world is against me anymore. I don't want to nap like 4 hours a day like I used to, crying all the time. Like it's all completely like mellowed out and I feel so much happier. I like myself more. Yeah, it was a beautiful transition for me. Obviously there's side effects too. So if you want to know about them, leave a comment. But yeah, don't worry about it.
You talked about the really positive impact of medication, and one of the reasons we specifically wanted to pull up that video is that medication is seen so controversially, and we know from the figures we see of people with a diagnosis of ADHD, roughly 50% after a year, it's a 50-50 split between those who are opting for medication and those who are not. which shows people are making a choice, and it's an important one. What are the sort of like big challenges do you think? And I suppose one of the things that worries us is that because there seems to be such a stigma around medication, is that people, rather than making a decision solely based on like, does this work for me? Does this make a difference for me? That the stigma is then more of something they talk about. Like, what do you like when you were thinking of taking medication? Like, what choices did you have to go through? Like, how did you think about it?
Well, I guess for me, like, I guess it kind of goes back to the TikTok stuff. I think the more transparent and normalized it is, the better. And I guess it depends on where you go. I ended up going private. It's a long story. It's a boring story, but I had to go private. And I think the way that I was treated was validated. And I think people don't realize how many people have ADHD for a start. And I think also...
That's actually, I'm just going to jump in because it's a really, really important point.
Yeah.
They don't. Like, ADHD is a relatively common condition. It's 1 in 20. So it's 5% of kids, and it's 3.5% of adults. And those figures, because I know that our population studies, the 5% is from a Lancet macro study, and the 3.5% is the NICE guidelines. And so we use those both because they're the UK numbers on it. But you are looking at sort of 1 in 20. So it's a relatively common condition, but it is not treated like a relatively common condition. No. And people don't know what it is. Like I find when I say to people I've got ADHD, you kind of get a nice, oh, okay, like that's, but I don't know much about it. Could you tell me? And suddenly I have to advocate for myself. Like and so when I'm asking for things, people just don't quite believe I need them. Like it's.
I think at the end of the day, like, that's on them because they don't understand what it's like to live with it. I think a lot of people say, well, everybody struggles with those things, and like, to an extent, yes, they do. But it's the limits that you struggle to, which is what the diagnosis is for. But I think at the end of the day, you wouldn't tell somebody who has anxiety or depression to stop taking their antidepressants. So it shouldn't be treated any differently. And I think there's so much to it that people don't realize that, like, so for me, for example, I've taken it for the past 8 months. I sometimes have like a medicine holiday, for example. Like, I won't have them at the weekend because I don't need to like be on my game, or I don't, I'm just lying in bed. So you can obviously chop and change, but what's good about them is it's not like you have to, if you don't like them, if it's not for you, you don't have to wean off it. It's like an instant thing, and it instantly goes away at the end of the day. So it makes it actually more comfortable to start up, because it's not like you have to wait 3 months for it to kick in, like a normal, slow release medicine. It's like the same day. So if you instantly, for example, with my friends in Australia, I just tried, I think it was something like Ritalin, and I know that that's supposed to be a little bit more harsh. She hated it, so she's going to try something else. So I think that's the beauty of it, is that there
are different options. Now you did a wonderful video on the sort of the contradictions of the ADHD brain, which we'd like to share with everyone.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
6 ADHD behaviour traits you might not have known about. You're prone to rejection sensitivity, so if somebody's been off with you, you have a really hard time with that. You tend to feel really ashamed and embarrassed for the amount of questions that you ask, and people are always like, why are you not listening? Why are you being so rude? Like, I literally just told you this, are you daft or something? And you're trying so hard to take it in, but literally only about 20% is, and then you feel nervous to ask a question about it. You're a very now or never sort of person, and only tend to do things when it's absolutely urgent. And that's not just work, it's general life things, like putting your phone on charge when you've only got 1% battery, or filling up your tank when you've got a morsel of petrol left, or even going to the bathroom only when you're absolutely bursting. You tend to make a lot of careless mistakes, and it's not because you don't care, it's because your brain's moving so quickly that you can't keep up with it. Like, have you ever read a page of instructions and read the last one before the first? You have a really bad sleeping pattern, you're up at all hours and tend to work the best at night, creatively and productively, but then you get so frustrated at yourself because you wish you could just be a morning person and you're just not. You can go from 100% enthusiasm, all guns blazing, this is the best idea of all time, 1 minute, and then the next minute you couldn't care less.
It's a wonderful video talking about some of the challenges of ADHD. Or you've messaged saying that there's a better one on contradictions, and this one's but this one's still a favorite, which is a wonderful thing. Obviously, as an ADHD conference, we are running slightly late, and we started slightly late. And actually, the only bit we're a bit annoyed about is the technical challenges at the start, because those are, we thought we had handled. But we are, to be fair, doing something completely new. You had one last video, which I can't resist, and I think is important, right? Because when we talk about ADHD, too much of the time we talk about the challenges of it and not about the sort of the opportunities, the strengths. And you did a wonderful video on the benefits of the ADHD brain. So I'd like to share that with people now.
Here are 6 benefits of having an ADHD brain. Your passions are always super authentic, whether it's for a hobby or it's for an idea or a person. And that's because you physically cannot fake interest. So you don't have to try and pursue your passions. That's the only thing you can do. You love taking risks and seizing new opportunities, where some people might find it more beneficial to stay in their comfort zone and play it safe. You like to seize those chances. You like to navigate new things. You find it exciting and just a challenge. You're very understanding and empathetic to other people's problems, and you're actually quite good at giving advice. And that's because you go through so many different emotions and perspectives and thoughts on a daily basis, and your way of processing them changes over time. So you feel like you can totally relate to other people's problems and see where they're coming from. You have this insane ability where you can hyper-focus on something for literally fucking hours. Like sometimes we're talking 8 to 10 hours and you don't even know where the time's gone, and it doesn't feel like work whatsoever to you because you're so excited and into it. You're unbelievably resilient. So if you fail something a million times, you're just going to keep going until you get it right. You're good at thinking of solutions to problems rather than giving up. You're extremely creative and you're always thinking outside the box, which means that you're actually really good at brainstorming things, because the ideas just never stop for a second in your head, which actually does make it very difficult to actually pursue these ideas sometimes, but at least you're good at brainstorming them.
It is wonderful, like, to hear the strengths, and we talk about it a lot, and we have obviously some people with ADHD who are extraordinary successes. One of them, Meg. When you think of the strengths, like, what's the one you like when you think of ADHD strengths, what's top of mind? What's your favorite ADHD strength?
Well, I think probably how resilient ADHD people are, because of the amount of knockbacks that you get in life, and like how many times that you would like fail at something and then push back because you're like, no, I need to prove myself in a way. And that comes from like a younger age, but then it kind of goes into your older age. And so for me, I think that if I really want something, I'm going to keep trying until I get it, and I'm not going to stop. And I think that that's also something that if you can zone in on. Another strength is obviously you can't really fake how you feel. You either like something or you don't, or you're interested or not. That's pretty much as basic as it's going to get. So if you are interested in something, you'll know, because you can't fake the interest. And then you can go down like these crazy rabbit holes of interest and ideas, and things are flowing. And it's great to be in that zone and have that kind of energy around you. But yeah, I think it's just about being in like the right place, the right work environment. And then, I think that's why this conference and all these other ADHD conversations are so important, because the more that people get on board with it and realize it is a thing that that ADHD or any neurodivergent person has had to deal with their whole lives, being in like the wrong kind of society, the better it's going to be, and the more times people are going to be able to like flourish and use their like ADHD as like a strength. Because that's at the end of the day what you want. You don't want it to always be like, oh, I've got ADHD, it's negative. Like, I try to make it a positive thing, but it's like about controlling the negative traits, really.
I think that's like, I'm certainly in the same place. Like, where, look, we want to minimize the negative and build out the positive, and that's the way we can thrive. We can be absolutely incredible. Often people talk about the superpower analogy, like, ADHD is your superpower. I have to say, like, I do want to kill those people generally, and because it risks, and it does, taken too simplistic, it risks like undermining how difficult it is to have ADHD. And I like to push the analogy slightly further and say, yes, ADHD is a superpower, but damn it, there are a lot of people throwing kryptonite. And
if you zone in on it, that's why it's so important to do these kind of things that you're doing. If you zone in on it, then you don't feel like alone with the things you struggle with, because you're like, actually, I can do things. And even we're talking before about medication, you don't have to have a medication. You can have other ways and means to make life easier for yourself if you initially realize what the problem is. I think it's not knowing, and that's what makes you feel a bit crazy.
Exactly. And exactly. Medication's a 50-50 split, so we know people go both ways on that. It's been absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you for being our first guest. So you dealt with our teething problems as we got into it. We've got 24 hours of this, so by the end we'll probably be adequate.
Fine. Thanks so much for having me on. It's an honor for me to be on. So
well, it's our honor too, and I think it's really important to have someone who, like you, is making an impression in TikTok, because it's such an important medium for ADHD. So many people are learning about it, and to like you I don't know, like, hopefully this doesn't happen to you, but like some people are a little snooty about TikTok. They're a little bit dismissive, and they really shouldn't be. Like there's and there's on ADHD alone, I have to check the latest stat, but I think it's 15 billion times #ADHD videos have been viewed. It's an incredibly important medium, but it is not alone to ADHD. If you look at the same sort of views for, say, autism, you're looking at similar sort of numbers. And so it is a community coming together and learning together, and it's so important what you're doing. You
feel better about yourself as well at the end of the day, because you become more self-aware, and then you realize that you're not by yourself. So, and
you can, and that self-awareness means you can build on your strengths and work on, and help minimize those weaknesses. It's so important. You've been absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much. You are our first and an absolute star guest, and I look forward to more videos from you and from where this goes for you. So, but thank you so very, very much.
You're welcome. Thank you so much.